Hello, my beautiful souls. Welcome to another enlightening episode of Living Naturally with Michaela, where we talk about important topics that impact our health, well being, and personal growth. I'm Michaela Jones, indeed, naturopath, energy healer, integrative holistic health specialist. And my co host today is Dr. Michelle Greenwell of the Greenwell Center, who is, we call her the Tai Chi master over here because she is the mistress of movement. So, speaking of movement, today we are going to be talking about movement. We are going to be talking about the healing power of movement. Movement is more than just, what we do with our bodies every day. There is actually a saying that says, exercise is a celebration of what my body can do. Okay, so
Mm.
I love that phrase, but we're not talking about just exercise itself. We're talking about movement and all kinds of movement and what movement can do for us beyond just exercising. So let's start with Dr. Michelle. Let's see what she has in her cup today. As you guys know, she is also the owner of Cape Breton Tea Company, and she creates all of these yummy, wonderful teas with intention. So let's talk to Dr. Michelle today and see what she has in her cup and what she wants to bring forward for this discussion today.
It's in Tinkerbell. And the way Tinkerbell moves, I was just thinking about just that lightness and that zip wherever you want to go. And that's what we want everybody to feel like when we're finished our conversation today and they've been empowered by movement. But in it, I put Nova Scotia Harvest. And
Mm,
there's two things I wanted to highlight from this that I feel are really important. And one is sunflower petals are inside here. There's a whole bunch of like confetti of different petals, but sunflowers are about loyalty and about positive energy and being able to activate. So when you're thinking about starting something new, if you haven't been moving, then if you think about the sunflower and think about how strong it is as it rises up and it goes above everything else, and then it just shines immensely into that sun just by the way it opens up. And so when you think about sipping on the tea, you have that same power and resiliency that's coming into that. But then the second part is green tea. And I
mhm.
didn't think, I mean, I know people, well, some people may be aware that green tea has antioxidants in it. So it's going to
Yes,
rebuild the cell structure. But the other key piece is what it does. It helps the joints to open, takes down the inflammation. You and I have talked about that on a couple of episodes.
yes,
Um, it has this ability to support bone loss. And when you combine it with movement, you're going to have that movement is actually going to massage the bones and help to build that bone density. And so you have this opportunity to also bring that forward with your cup of tea, which I think is really interesting. And it protects the cartilage and it has the opportunity to improve fat metabolism,
mm,
to help with glucose tolerance and insulin. And people might not be thinking about that in relation to
right,
movement, but with movement, it means that when you go to move, you're bringing that whole package together,
right.
and you can do that with those herbs shining right beside you. And Nova Scotia Harvest for me, blueberry, maple, apple. I mean, it's perfect for the fall and feeling cozy and comfy. And yeah, so I'm hugging my mug of Tinkerbell.
All right. Well,
And
thank
thanks
you.
for asking.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that today. All right. So now that we have our intention with our tea today, let's jump into our discussion. So, our first point of topic, we're going to talk about movement as medicine. And so, this is basically like the physical benefits of movement beyond exercise. As I was saying when we started, we think of movement as exercise, and it's like an exercise kind of like a bad word for many people. It creates this tension,
Whoa.
if you will. It's like, it's like that pushback against exercise. It's like becomes like this, this very bad word. Okay. So we're gonna just like kind of take exercise out of the equation and we're just going to use the word movement. Okay. So we're gonna look at the physical benefits of movement. So Michelle, would you like to start off this particular discussion?
I would love to. I would love to. Because I think a lot of people forget about the fact that if they don't move, there's no communication going on in the entire body, and your brain
Mhm.
cannot function unless you move. It's waiting for the cues of movement, and then it's instigated. And a lot of people just think, oh, I just have to think, but you only have the capacity of what your body has done. So if you've been frozen, your brain really becomes frozen.
Right.
So you start doing movement, you start integrating right and left sides of the brain. So then you have more brain power, you have more networking capabilities. For those people that end up with stroke, being able to have a movement vocabulary means you can find other pathways in your brain to access parts of the brain that might get shut off. That can be
Mhm.
really powerful. So, from a preventative measure, that can be one thing that you really want to look at. And the other that most people don't think about that I love about my work with Tai Chi is that we have reciprocals in the body. So, when you move one body part, you can be assisting another body part. So you might not be able to move your ankles because they're really stiff and sore, but you can move your wrists and they can become the way to get to the ankles.
Mm.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, the movement of the ankles lessens, the inflammation goes down. You might have sipped on tea too, but you've got this capability of actually working across the body. And this communication goes back through the brain and it provides just such an incredible network.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. That's really, yeah. So for my aspect, from the the naturopathic realm, the mind body connection, some additional points too along with that is that movement also enhances our circulation and our lymphatic drainage, and a lot of people don't really think about that either, and those two parts are very critical for our bodies to be able to detoxify itself. So just simply walking pumps the lymphatic system, which helps the body, to do its normal detoxification process. And a lot of people don't realize that either, just by simply just moving. And some other points too is that it also helps with our digestion and it improves our metabolism. You've already talked about cellular health. It also helps with our cellular health. Um, it can also movement can also help improve our organ health, and it helps by supporting the natural rhythms and functions of the body. It's like movement is like a just it's an integrated part of our body, and we think about, oh, it's just movement, but even like small very mindful movements that you talked about, it's like, oh, you can't move your ankles but you can move your wrist, so you move your wrist, and then that kind of starts the process, and it just kind of you know goes from there. And um and that's one of the things that I want people to understand with this discussion we're having today, is that movement doesn't have to be big. It can start off small, which makes it accessible to everyone and anyone. Any little movement that you can do. I have this phrase that I use lots of times with my clients and they laugh. And I said, something's better than nothing. So, what little bit you can do is a great starting off point. So, even if have chronic illness or you have limited mobility, you can still do something. And that little something that you start with can grow into something more, and then into something more, and then to something more. So I want people to stop thinking in terms of exercise and that negative connotation that comes with it. I can't exercise, I can barely move, and start thinking in terms of mindful movement.
Mhm.
So we want to change that, shift that, that perspective, if you will.
And we talk about less is more. And a lot
Okay.
of people that come into Tai Chi class in particular, it would be the same if they were taking a dance class or even doing yoga, but they come in with the idea that they have to be good enough. So they have to be able to stand and stay in the postures that everybody else is doing. But actually, if you really listen to the body and you only do what you need to do, so less is more, the energy starts to really move so incredibly through the body and you can feel it. But you can't feel it if you keep pushing into the resistance,
Mhm.
because the resistance nullifies your ability to be aware. So you have to back yourself up to that place where you can actually understand those small little movements. And then you'll start to feel the fingertips vibrate. You'll feel the toes vibrate. You'll feel the spine start to lift up and your breath go deeper. And all of that is possible because less was more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Less is more. So again, it doesn't have to be big. You can start small, so don't let the idea that you're limited in what you do hold you back,
Mm-hmm.
because you can do something. Which, brings us into the next point, about movement and how, it has such healing potential beyond just exercise, is that I like the mental clarity that physical movement brings as well. And a lot of people don't think about that point either. It's like, exercise, it can help, it helps us, it affects our brains and our nervous system, on one hand, by helping manage the stress. And when you get your stress under control, that also brings more mental clarity. Stress is like one of those big things that kind of affects your mental clarity. But beyond that, though, movement also can help boost neurotransmitter production, which, like dopamine and serotonin, which also, can improve your mood and your mental focus. So, I know that you work in the Tai Chi realm. How have you seen that affect, the people that you work with? I mean, I kind of feel like, you kind of, I practice Tai Chi too, but I'm nowhere, close to, the level that you are. And
Being an addict about it.
and I find that many times when I just kind of get this urge, is like, I have to do something. I have to do like some sort of, Tai Chi. I mean, I do both Tai Chi and yoga. They're different, in different ways. And I find that sometimes when I get this hankering to do some Tai Chi movement, is usually during times when I'm feeling a little cluttered, and so I take the moment to do just even like a few movements, and I feel like the cobwebs just kind of shake loose. So,
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
that something that you've seen happen as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's particularly um, yoga, if you're holding poses, it might not work quite the same way. It would come around a different way.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of whole body movement, which could be through dance, because it could be through the expansion and contraction of movement, and it can come through Tai Chi, is that you start pulling on all of the fascia in the body.
Hmm.
And as that fascia is getting pulled and massaged, it's sending messaging everywhere. And you're right, it's clearing out the cobwebs. They even say it's kind of like a fuzz. So when you get up in the morning, the fascia has this fuzz on it. And then as you start moving, the fuzz disappears. So if you think of that clarity, it just messages are traveling at the speed of light.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how beautiful is that?
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put that. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the fuzz. And yeah, it does feel fuzzy. It's like the whole body feels fuzzy.
Mhm.
And when that lifts, not only does it lift from the body, it lifts from the brain and from the mind as well.
Yep.
And I hadn't really put it into that particular connotation before, but I can say many times, like after I do my movements and stuff, you mentioned earlier, I start feeling like tingling in my toes, and I feel tingling in my fingers. And then, yeah, and I can actually feel, I'm one of those people that I tend to be hyper aware of energy movement through my body. So I can actually feel like the energy moving through my body.
Mhm.
And yeah, after I do, some mindful movement, it's like things are traveling faster. And yeah, it's removing it was removing the cobwebs, not only from the mind, but from the body as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah.
Also, from a movement perspective, you have the movement that happens in the shoulder seam and the hip seam. Those are two key areas that feed back to the brain.
Hmm.
So if you don't feed it information that's coming from the body about where your limbs are, how you're moving, where you are in space, your mind just becomes cluttered with stuff because it's thinking about stuff. But when you start moving, it is activated and it's brought forward into either problem solving, new
Yeah.
ideas, creativity, intuition, the awareness that you have of how you feel. All
Yeah.
of that is wakened up. And I think sometimes, I don't know that we've even thought about the fact that the clutter in our head is really, it's really the blockage of information. And
Yeah.
so you just make stuff up into your head that just you can't get out, right? And so you have the monkey mind that just keeps going over and over the same phrase.
Monkey mind.
It's stuck in there. Um, in Tai Chi, we have two movements that I love to do together. One is brush knees, which travels forward, which is
Hmm.
like traveling forward, moving yourself forward, creativity, new ideas. But then we have ward off the monkey, which is you travel backwards. So you come back in time, you come back through the opportunities, but then you could travel forward again. And there's incredible meditation that happens when you do those two patterns together. I mean, doing a whole Tai Chi set is wonderful, but particularly those two, it can be instantly. Everything is gone. My emotions all calm down. I feel so much better. And then it's like anything's possible. And my mind is no longer doing that race. It is completely shut off. And I don't have that phrase driving in the background or that song that will not leave you, the earworm that's there. Yeah.
Yeah, the mental chatter. Yeah, I freely admit that I have to battle mental chatter on a daily basis. And I think we all do. And when you become aware of it, that's the next step. It's like we all battle with it. But when you become aware of it and you recognize that there are things that you can do to help, tamp that chatter down, there are other tools that you can use rather than trying to and most people try to control it just by, okay, I'm just going to change what I'm thinking about, but sometimes that doesn't work. So being able to have additional tools like, okay, well, I can get up and I can do a flow, and that naturally calms the mental chatter. It's
Mhm.
like, why not use that? Why not add that to your toolbox?
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, and it can be the same, lots of times in the kitchen, I'll just start moving where I'm starting to move shoulders and hips, which would be
Hmm.
more of a modern contemporary kind of flow of movement in dance. But if you start moving like that, your body pretty soon it just starts to crave moving like that because it,
Yeah.
it always feels so good.
Yeah.
So I find myself doing that a lot more. And in the car, when you've sat for too long, when the
Yeah.
when the car tells you you've been in the car for 2 hours and you should really get up, then I start doing what I can in the limited space that I have, but it always just feels so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I often will just kind of make up movements and make up my own flow that's not really a full, like, actual movement. It's just a flow of movement that my body likes. So it's not anything that's named. It's just something I do, which, those of you that are listening, and that's another key. It's like you don't actually have to just learn something and have to do something that you've learned or follow, some instruction or whatever. Just get up and move in a way that feels good. Okay, your body innately knows what it needs. So just get up and move, put on some music and just dance to the music. Whatever comes out. Which brings me actually to the next point. You've already mentioned the shoulders and hips. Okay. So the shoulders and hips are actually parts of the body where a lot of tension and trauma gets stored. Okay. Which obviously is going to affect our health and our body's ability to move properly. So movement can actually help release that stored unresolved emotions and trauma that gets stuck in these particular body parts. So what happens is, we experience these unresolved emotions and these traumas, and then they lodge in different parts of the body, and then those parts of the body will show that storage there by tension and stress and even sometimes physical pain. You know, one of the ways that you people that are listening can understand this is like when you're stressed, you get a lot of tightness between the shoulder blades, you know, or women in particular, we tend to have a lot of tightness and pain in our hips. Okay, that's going to be some of those places where things get stored, and being able to move those parts of the body, as Michelle said, moving the shoulders, it'll help release some of that tension that comes from that stored emotion that is stuck there. It's like literally shoulders also is another place, and lots of times shoulders, tension in the shoulders come from like worry, literally like holding the weight of the world on your shoulders. It manifests in this tension in the shoulders, and you're always kind of doing this and doing that and stuff. So being able to do those movements can help loosen up those areas, which also helps release those stored trauma that's there. So what's your take on this, Michelle? I
Well,
know I'm just chatting away. Blah blah
just
blah blah blah.
no,
So
it's interesting because as you were talking about that, I was thinking again, it's a couple ways that I'm saying things differently than I've said them before. And this one, as you were talking about the shoulders and the hips, I'm thinking about neural reflex integration. And what that means is what is the brain body connection? But what is it in relationship to the patterns that we developed? So, as a baby lying on the floor, we would have moved arms and legs first. Then we would have figured out how to turn across until eventually we could roll. Then eventually you moved yourself to crawling. So, you had all these little reflex patterns that innately are in the system that need to be massaged in order for you to get to the next stage. If you don't move those shoulders and hips as an adult or as a child who's developed all their skills, then you start to shut down those reflexes. And then you've got, like you said, the emotions have stored in the hips and the shoulders. Those are the key places where those reflexes work.
yeah,
So now you're taking out these patterns that are innately in there that were designed to help you thrive, but you've actually shut them off. And so it just becomes so key that the choices that we make every day and how we live really are the way that we've developed ourselves. And if we're stuck in
mm,
a lot of pain, we have a whole bunch of inflammation, we got ourselves there
right,
and we have patterns. They're not working. And you
right,
want to hold on to them. Well, I always have this in the morning. I always do that. You might, but it puts you right where you are. Do you really want
yeah,
to keep that? And so but thinking about the fact that those reflexes don't get a voice and we've shut them off and we're not
hmm,
allowing our body to function the way it was designed, we're creating a lot of havoc for where we're going. Um, so it just brings it forward that movement needs to be a part of your day. It needs to be how you engage with your ideas and the creativity and how you let your mind stop trying to solve all the world's problems
right.
with limited capacity, but allow you to open up and not be worried about all the world's problems.
Right, right. Yeah, and I would also add, um, I work a lot with clients helping them to release, trapped emotional energies. That's part of what I do. Part of the whole mind body connection is I try to help people understand that most of the time when there is some sort of physical ailment that's going on, that there is an emotional anchor to that. So there's usually some sort of emotional trauma or unresolved something that is going on along with that, and in order to have complete health, you not only have to address the physical, but you have to address the mental and the emotional as well. So what I wanted to throw out there is that movement and movement practices, whatever they are, whatever resonates with you, is also a very safe, nonverbal way for you to process trauma and emotion without having to go back and revisit it. And most people think that in order to release it, I have to go back and bring it all back up and, and talk about it and this, that, and the other. And you don't have to do that. It's like simple movement, mindful movement can actually help you process that trauma that is stuck there. And you may not even know why it's there or where it came from or anything like that. And with mindful movement, you don't have to, but your body is telling you it's there. That stress, that tension, that pain is telling you that it's there. You don't have to know why it's there. You don't have to know how it got there, but your body is telling you it's there. That's why it's important to be aware of what your body is saying to you. It'll tell you what it needs. It'll tell you, what you need to be doing to make it better. You just have to listen.
Mhm, mhm. And that's where that the ward off monkey and the brush knees, that forward and backward, and moving yourself through different dimensions, because it's another piece that people don't think about. Well, I move enough in the day, washing the dishes and laundry, and it might be a lot of all forward motion things. Maybe you're at the computer, but you think, oh well, I move around a little bit while I'm there, but it's that opportunity to move through the space and time, and
Mhm.
that forward connecting with the backward, which is resolving past to future
Yeah,
and bringing you back into that present moment. And our cells are all set up by front, middle, and back as well.
yeah,
So when we're not moving in those different dimensions, our cells also are held back from being able to function in the way that they're supposed to be functioning. So isn't it cool that through a movement, you actually could take the cell and you could completely change the way a cell is functioning?
yeah.
And you think about how empowering it is, and it's like, why am I not moving? It doesn't make
Exactly,
any sense.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation today, because it is so important for people to understand that simple movement can just do wonders for your physical and your mental health. And a lot of people just don't know that and don't recognize that. So I think this is a very, very important conversation to be had, because most people just think of movement in terms of exercise. And again, like I said at the beginning, exercise has become, that's the new four-letter word. It's like, it has this very negative associated with it. So we want to, shift the mindset on that. It's all about mindset. So we've talked about that before too. Mindset. You believe something and that kind of becomes what it is. So whether it's true or not.
And I also thinking about when you think exercise, you think about you need to go do something yourself.
Yes.
But movement really is community based. It's
Yeah.
about how you're interacting with other people, it's how you are in a group setting. So there's this connection that you can have when you're doing movement. And to think about not so much that you have to go do your 15, 20 minutes that you slotted into that bit and you need
Yeah.
to quickly go down the road and do your walk. Who do you see on the walk? Are you
Right.
smiling at the neighbors? Did you stop to pet the dog? Did you,
Yeah.
like, all these other things that allow you to interact and connect? And that's the other piece about movement. It's not an isolated thing. It's something that brings you back into community. And maybe
Yeah.
it's nature. Maybe
Yeah.
it's noticing the leaves on the trees and the sun is shining and wind is blowing and you're having this conversation with nature, and that inspires you to start to heal.
Yeah.
And it's important that that movement is quality and connected.
Yeah. I also find too that when the movement is enjoyable as
Mm,
well,
mhm.
that makes a huge difference. A lot of people, they balk at having to, go lift weights or whatever they think exercise is. But movement is entirely different. If you enjoy walking in nature, guess what? You're going to do it more. you're going to get more benefit out of it, because not only is your physical body benefiting from the walk itself, it's pumping the lymph and, and keeping you movement, but your mind is also benefiting from it because you're enjoying the walk, you're enjoying the scenery. Like you said, even in communication, you're in community, you're enjoying being with other people, you're enjoying interacting with other people. And that's part of what we need to bring into this equation, because it's going to benefit us on a whole health level. And that's what this is all about. That's what this conversation is about. It's the whole health
Mhm.
view of things, not isolated.
And it includes cleaning because
Yes.
I had to really learn to appreciate having to clean the toilet, right? But movement that is around, even doing the bathroom, how many different positions, activities are you doing while you're engaged in cleaning the bathroom that allows you to move through such a range of motion? And if you do it with joy, it is completely different than I have to go clean the bathroom,
True. True.
right?
Yeah.
But it does give you, in my house, it takes me about 30 minutes to do 2 bathrooms completely, and, there's 30 minutes of movement, but
Hmm.
it's in ways I would not have moved if I'd gone for a walk.
Right.
I'm upside down, I'm reaching, I'm stretching, and it's those are the ways that my body is going to have more result than if I walked straight forward. And some people will walk and they say, "Oh, I walked, but I carried my coffee with me or my water bottle or my walking stick." And it's like, did you swing your arms?
Yeah.
Did you actually like move your whole body, or were you locked? And if you were talking to someone while you were walking, were you facing sideways the whole time that you were doing that? So making sure that you're optimizing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You said a word, and it brought up something for me. You said have to.
Yeah.
That's something we need to change, because when we say we have to do something, it automatically puts it in a negative light.
Hmm.
So I encourage those that are listening to change the have to get to. Think about that for a moment. You
Hmm.
get to do this. Some people don't get to do that. Some people wish they could do that. So
Yeah.
change the have to get to. And I also wanted to add one other point too about the cleaning. I have found too that cleaning and having a, a space that is uncluttered also helps with mental clarity,
Hmm.
because when your space is cluttered, your mind is cluttered. So,
Hmm.
taking that to the next level of cleaning, it declutters the mind, and it's less things for you to worry about. Because I know for me, um, I work at home, but I'm always looking around at that needs to be picked up, that needs to be picked up, and the house is always, there's something about the house that's always okay. And so I find that my attention gets divided, because it's like, I gotta go over here and do this. I gotta go pick that up. I gotta, but if all that's done, then you don't have to stress about that anymore. And you can focus in on whatever it is that you really want to be focusing in on. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
just my take on it. So
Hmm. I agree.
I don't know if anybody else experiences that, but that's my take on it. It's like, sometimes I get like rabbit brain, when, there's too many things out of place. So it's like, I have to stop, I have to go put it in place. Otherwise, it's going to
Hmm.
drive me crazy. So,
Hmm. And then that too is also a sign that the conscious mind is not being fed what it needs,
yeah.
because it's narrowing down into those tiny details that don't need to even be looked at really, but it doesn't know how to get out of it until
Right.
you've moved. And once you've moved, it's no longer stressing. It's completely let it go. And
Yeah.
then you've forgotten about it, that it was even there, which is
Yeah.
also lovely because out of sight, out of mind. And and then you just move forward. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit energetic flow. I know you're going to be all over this one because you're all about the flow. So let's
Mhm.
talk about energetic flow and aligning physical movement with our emotional and spiritual well-being. I'm going to let you take point on this one because this is where you excel and you have a
Uh,
lot of information here. So I'll just add my 2 cents later. I'm going to let you start with this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is one of the juicy bits about having done my master's thesis. And that was I did my project incorrectly and I discovered all kinds of fantastic information. It was the best mistake I ever made. And that is when I started to link up my Touch for Health knowledge of how the brain, the body, the muscles, the emotions all link together, and then how that matches over to movement. And at the time that I did the mapping of that, it hadn't been mapped out that way before
Mhm.
in anything I had found. Um, I matched it up to Tai Chi movements because that was the easiest. But I can say that I easily could match it up to dance movements as well, and I'm sure yoga would be able to be brought into that same piece. So what happens is when you aren't moving certain parts of your body, then you are shutting off certain systems in the body,
Mhm.
and that brings forward stuck emotions.
Yeah.
And then that brings you this beautiful lens that you keep looking through that is not the correct lens, but you think it is because that's all you know. That's where your body's at. So, movement then provides this opportunity for you to open up the lens, bring balance and flow to everything. And it's a clear lens. You respond with clarity, you don't respond with a bias. You might have some biases, but they don't come forward unless you're talking about a discussion in particular, but it could be as simple as somebody says something and you just like go, but it should have been like this. And then you go, why did I respond like that? Because your system is out of balance
Yeah.
and it you didn't move and it's stuck. And that's a signal to you that it's not working properly. And movement, when you especially when you're using those movements that are going to expand that fascia and get down into all the different systems and have them work together instead of one isolated like the weightlifting, like if you're just going to use the biceps as an example.
Yeah.
Let's say you're not connected to your feet, you're not connected to the legs and the hips while you're doing that bicep curl because you're so focused on the bicep, you're missing the whole body movement portion. But as soon as you put the whole body in, this balance and flow comes to all the systems, and it's so fantastic. So that's what I'm going to say.
Well,
Hit it,
and you
Sheila.
said a lot. Yeah, I knew you were going to have quite a bit to say about this. That's one of the reasons why I love having these little chats with you because there's always some great gems that come from these discussions. So, yeah, and my 2 cents that I would add is that being a naturopath and the whole mind body mind connection and also being an energy healer and just being able to understand the how the physical body and the energy body lines up and how when the energy flow is stagnant it also affects our physical body is a very important point that we need to understand, particularly like when you think about the energy centers, which some people call the chakras. The chakras in our physical body, they're like these wheels of subtle energy that goes from our head to our tailbone, through the center of our body. When I am working with clients, I often describe this as like the circuit breaker in a house. And like all the other parts of the body gets wired into that circuit breaker. And if something happens to trip the breaker, it will affect everything that is on that particular circuit, if you will. So when our energy centers or our chakras are off, everything in that center that's wired in there can also be off. And many times, even if you don't know how to like reset your chakras energetically, you can do movement to also reset and realign those. And just being able to do like simple stretching or energy flow movements can help reset those energy centers, which affects everything else in your body. If you think of like chiropractic care, it works on the spine. And one of the things that it talks about in the spine is how all the other organs and pieces of the body gets wired into the spine. And when you have something that's out of alignment in the spine, then those signals gets messed up going down the spine. And so usually where you have the subluxation, something is going to affect the physical body in where that's wired in. So the same thing, for our energy body when our chakras are off, it's going to affect our physical body because our energy body or our subtle energy is affected. But being able to do some mindful movement that can help rebalance all of that can help the physical body as well as the energy body.
Mhm.
And I know from Tai Chi, it's about the chi force and being able to flow through the
Mm.
body unhindered.
Mhm. Mhm. And as you were talking about the spine, so many people sit, and for those people listening at the moment, if you're sitting and you feel like your spine is sitting, all the vertebrae are on top of each other, and you're sitting down on the chair, that tells you that you have too much pressure in the system. And when you do movement and you sit, you actually end up putting space in between. So as you were talking of the subluxations,
Yeah,
this space that we create allows each of those bones to vibrate at the frequency they're supposed to be vibrating at. And then the space in between has its own song going on. But there's no song if it's all compacted. You
yeah,
just can't get anything going. And when that's all open, every muscle is inspired to be able to move. So you don't have some muscles that shut off, some muscles that are on, and then you create funny patterns. All of them are inspired to be moving.
yeah.
And then that's when emotions, because the emotions are attached to all those vertebrae.
Hmm. Yeah,
Those
yeah,
emotions are amazing. So yeah, it's just such an incredible piece. And people I know, when you start talking about energy, then they start, some people just, shut it
gloss
off.
over. Yeah,
But it's all the same. It's
yeah,
all the same. It's how are you functioning within that space, and are you filtering if those chakras are open? Are you filtering all the information coming to you, or are you not filtering it and making a jumble go on?
yeah.
Um, yeah, love it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. So let's move on to our. I had something that came to mind and then I totally lost it. So I need to go do
Like,
some movement when we get off of me. Oh, I know what it was. I was going to encourage people. You were talking about people that sit for a long period of time.
mhm,
And I would like to encourage people that if you sit at a desk a lot, I mean, you can't help it if your work keeps you at a desk, okay? But I would encourage you to either get a standing desk so you can move while you're working, which that's what I have. I have one of those ones that has like the push button so I can raise and lower it, or set a timer on your watch or something. It's like once an hour, once every half an hour or whatever. Just get up and move and walk around and do something. So it can help keep that spine from compressing that Michelle has been talking about. Um, I personally I keep a mini trampoline in my office. So I have like a little rebounder. And it's like periodically I'll get up and I'll just bounce on the rebounder for a couple minutes to kind of like loosen everything up and breathe a little bit more energy back into me and everything. And it helps the lymphatic system. But again, it's not about exercise, it's about movement. And it's about mindful movement. And in order to have mindful movement, you also need to be mindful that you need to move.
and I call it dynamic sitting. So you can sit statically, which is you're going to just sit on that chair and lock yourself into whatever it is you're doing. but you can also dynamically sit, which is be very aware of how you're moving and the way that everything is functioning, and even the pelvic floor. You can do so much from a chair
Yeah.
to keep everything in balance, and the pelvic floor needs to be moved. So, for those people that have a lot of challenge with being able for, how many times you run into the bathroom or not, then you have this opportunity to rebalance the pelvic floor that gets static while you're sitting on it and putting so much pressure on it. And there's just so much you can do from a chair, which
Yeah.
is lovely.
Well, which brings me to, and this is a little plug for you. Don't you have like some chair tai chi movements on your
Yeah.
channel or something?
Yep.
I encourage you guys to go and look at that, because there's a lot of great stuff, that you can do even while you're sitting in a chair to keep your body moving, even when you're sitting. So, yeah. So
Mhm.
I encourage all of you to go look at that. So,
Mhm. And that's, for those listening, that's on my YouTube channel at Michelle Greenwell, in the Tai Chi Wellness playlist. But what's interesting is I really felt compelled to look up seated Tai Chi because it was like not a lot of information about it. And the more I've learned about seated Tai Chi, I now teach all my classes seated. And then I go to standing because you learn so much about your body by how it's functioning when you don't have to worry about your balance, and you're not
mhm.
trying to balance the top half of the body to the bottom half, but you can focus in on a movement and understand what it means and what it means internally. And then when you stand up, you know what it feels like to move the right way, and you start actually doing that, but you also start to know how posture is. And when you stand up, you'll now know how that posture should be. And so for those people that think it's like it's a cop out or it's not enough, again, less is more. So you actually learn so much more from being seated, which I never would have imagined. Yeah, especially as a dancer.
All right. So that brings us to our last point that we're going to chat about. And, we've been talking a lot about movement and trying to shift your perspective from thinking of movement as just exercise, because movement is more than exercise. And movement done in a mindful way can actually help heal your body and help heal your mind, and give you the mental clarity that that you seek, and just make you feel better, emotionally balanced, and all of that. But so what I like to talk about now is about what we call sustainable wellness. Okay, it's not going to do you any good to have all these tools and learn all this stuff if you're not going to put it into action. It's also not going to do you any good if you, oh, I do it for a day or two and then you let it go by the wayside. Okay. So what we're talking about is having you shift that perspective so you can make movement part of your lifelong practice, which, can bring about full holistic health. So, Michelle, what's your take on this? I'm going to let you start with this one as well.
I get to start again. Thank you. Um, Absolutely. My whole day is centered around um, choosing energy raising activities. And it'll start in the morning with it could be my foot exercises, it could be doing a Tai Chi set, but throughout the day, I'm constantly you've probably for those people who might be watching rather than listening, you've probably seen me fidget. I'm on not my normal chair. It makes me lean back. I don't like it. I'm like, I want to sit up. I want to be completely present. And that's that dynamic sitting piece that I've just incorporated into my day and my body. If it doesn't get it, it really does protest. So it does become a way of life, and it just naturally flows in there. And it's just I kind of get this twinge that goes, I haven't moved for a while. I should move my feet, and then off I go. And I have lots of different exercises where I just picked one exercise, did it for a week, picked another exercise, did it for a week until I had this little vocabulary. And then
Yeah.
as the vocabulary picked up, it was easy to just say, I'm just going to do this and then do that activity and then pick another one next time. Um, so it's not hard to put it in there, and it's not that you have to think so much. It's when you just go, I'm not feeling as well as I'd like to. So
Yeah.
what do I need right now to feel better? And then put it in there.
Right. Which um, is a concept that on my end we talk about intuitive movement. And this is
Hmm.
all what I'm telling you, that your body innately knows what it needs. And if you start listening to it, it'll tell you what kind of movement you need. Just like sometimes, it's like although I don't like this people doing that, but sometimes your hands are stiff. So you start wringing your hands or you're pulling on your fingers or whatever. It's like your body's telling you that something is stiff there. Now, you probably shouldn't be pulling on your fingers, but you recognize those signals that your body is telling you something. Okay, so what I'm advocating though is that you start to listen to your body and listen to what it's telling you, and using that, your intuition about movement and what you need to do. It's like if you're sitting for a long time and your butt starts to hurt, what does that tell you? You need to get up and you need to walk around. Okay, so it's as simple as that. It's listening to the body, listening to what it's telling you, and then doing it. It doesn't have to be, something you learned. It doesn't have to be, oh, I got to go put in this DVD and exercise, or I have to pull up my app so I can get some movements. Just move in a way that feels right and intuitive for you in that moment. That's the whole mindfulness of this. I've said mindful a few times, and yeah, that's kind of the theme today. So you're probably going to get tired of hearing me say mindful all the time. But that's what it is. It's minding what's going on in the body, and it's listening to what the body is telling you. And I want people to understand that the idea of movement, you know, I always say, and people have heard this phrase before because it gets used a lot by a lot of other people, but it's true about how, health and wellness is a journey, not a destination. So we should also think about movement is also an evolving journey for our health as well.
Hmm.
Okay. It may start small with just getting up and walking around the block or moving the wrist. But as you evolve and you start to learn to listen to your body, and your body starts telling you what movements it really needs, how you move will also evolve. It's kind of like taking a dance class. When you first start, you have no idea what any of the steps are. You
Hmm.
learn a single step, you practice that for a long time. You might, find yourself dancing around in your kitchen, which I have done that, by the way. So, um, dancing around your kitchen. And then as you start to learn that, it becomes a natural part of your movement. Then you learn another step, and then you learn another step. And then next thing you know, you're doing multiple steps and full on routines. It's part of the journey. So we should also think about the movement that we do in our daily lives as part of our health and wellness journey as well, because it will also not only help our bodies to be more resilient, but it'll also help our mind with more clarity, and it'll help us to release all of that pent up emotion, which I know these days there's a lot of that going on. There's just so much anxiety in the world that I'm surprised we're not all walking around just kinked up. Okay. So that movement can help you release a lot of that, which can, increase your physical health as well as your mental health and your emotional health. And that's what true holistic health is: body, mind, spirit, all of that. Got to have a balance. And guess what? Movement can help you with all of those pieces.
Hmm.
So, Michelle, I'm going to let you have the takeaway here. So, what do you want to leave us with today?
Well, I hope we've inspired people to think differently about how their monkey mind and their busyness in their head may be a sign that they need to be doing more movement. So to hear that cue and actually realize I need to do something different. And then the next part is take small changes, less is more. You don't have to make big movements, very small ones, slow moving ones are really going to start to feed interest into what you're doing. And the next is awareness. Start to really pay attention to those cues in the body. How does my spine feel? Where is my breath? Do I have a monkey mind that's there every single day? Do I wake up in the middle of the night and it's going again? That's just the signals that you need to pay attention. And yeah, a couple movements in the middle of the night, you'll crawl back into bed and you can go right to sleep. It's really amazing. Most people think, oh, that would wake me up, but it actually calms the system down and allows you to sleep. So those are my 2 cents at the end. And I love this topic because I just think people have lost the ability to understand movement vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it is so important. Coming through the pandemic, we really got stuck. And so
Yeah.
some of us don't realize we're still there, and we need to figure out how to get back out there
Yeah.
and really connect. So thank you for the topic today.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Well, I anticipate that we will have many more conversations about movement because, it's an important topic, So, today we were just talking about the healing power of movement, but there are so many things that we can talk about the benefits of movement. So, I know we're going to have more conversations. So, which reminds me, so we are ramping up with this show to have, more and more information. So, you can join Michelle and I every first Friday of the month. And we're going to be talking about something about mind body connection because that's what we're all about. And most of the time, that conversation is going to be about movement. So, it may not be, specifically about exercise or, things like that, but there is this connectivity between the mind and the body. Okay. And one of the key points to a healthy body is movement. So we will probably have more discussions on movement. And I encourage you to join us again. And so that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're listening to it later on rather than live, thank you for watching the video. Go and check out Michelle's channel as well and get some of those Tai Chi playlist videos and check those out. And we will see you guys again next month. Thanks. Bye for now.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Living Naturally for Life, the Greenwell Center for Holistic Health, and Cape Breton Tea Company. Comment, like, subscribe.